Hi, so we're back in VEXVR and we're going to take a look at lists, and in particular 2D lists. So let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to do first is we're going to open up the kind of the output window, as well as it's interesting. It's basically like a debugger inside of VEXVR. Okay, so this would be like, they're calling it a monitor. Okay, so this, in a lot of programming environments, this would be your debug process. So okay, so it allows us to take a look at sensors and variables as well as output from the code. Okay, so let's take a look here. So we're going to open that. So we open the monitor by clicking on this button. Looks like a little sunshine on the right there. And we're opening up the playground. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and leave it on grid map for now. And notice that we have the metrics up at the top there. So when we go ahead and run, so at runtime, basically when we hit this play button here, we'll be able to see the location of the robot, as well as the other data. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this 2D list. So the first thing about 2D lists here, we're just going to jump right into 2D lists. So everything you learn about 2D lists, one-dimensional list will work as well. Okay, so if we can imagine here, let's just make two. So this is our sample 1D. Okay, and let's say that we have 5 items in our 1D list. So we'll go ahead and click OK. Okay, so we have a 1D list, sample 1D. And then I'm going to click on make 2D list over here. And we're going to call this sample 2D. Okay, and we can name it anything we want. All right. Okay, and so for this height of this 2D list, we're going to go ahead and make it 10 and width 10. Okay, so notice that we have a limit of 20 spots in our list, both the height and width, so rows and columns. So why wouldn't you just make it 20 by 20? Well, you wouldn't make it 20 by 20 because it's going to be hard to look at it in the variables window here. You know, if you had a 20 by 20 grid, that would be a lot of spots that you'd have to look at. Okay, for this VEXVR, I think they just made it like these limits so that, you know, it'd be easy to work with. Usually, it depends on the programming language you're using. A lot of times, lists can be added to and removed from in some languages. In other languages, you have to declare them right off the bat, and then can't change them later. So in this case, you cannot change it later. So in VEXVR, you have to say how many rows and how many columns of your lists you need to have right off the bat. So we're going to make this 10. Height is going to be 10 and width is going to be 3. And rather than calling this sample 2D, we're going to call this H. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and click submit. Okay, so let's go ahead and add lists here. So we're on the right-hand side in monitor. I'm going to go ahead and click add lists, and I'm going to go ahead and check both of these and click save. Okay, so let's take a look over here in the variables section, and we see that we have sample 1D and we have H. Okay, so you see sample 1D, we have these curly braces, and then we have numbers separated by commas. In VEXVR, each of these spots in the list, each item in the list, has to be a number. Okay, it can't be anything else. So notice that our sample 1D list is a list of numbers, right? It's all the items are numbers. Our 2D list that we called H is basically a list of lists, right? So item 1 in H is a list itself. Item 2 is a list. Item 3 is a list. Item 4 is a list. Right, and then inside each one of those lists, we have 3 items in each list. So if you can imagine, sample 1D, okay, so that's our 1D list, is a list of numbers. H, our 2D list, is a list of lists, and each of those lists is a list of numbers. Okay? Super easy once you get used to it, all right? Okay, so let's go ahead and I just made sample 1D there to show to kind of illustrate the difference between a 1D list and a 2D list. We're going to work mainly with a 2D list here, just to jump right in. So I'm going to click Add Lists again. I'm going to uncheck sample 1D and then click Save. So we're only looking at H. Now my idea here is that I'm going to use this 2D list to make a letter. Okay, in this case, I'm going to make the letter H. All right, and I haven't really thought through it. I'm just assuming that, hey, it's only going to take me 10 moves or less to make this H. Okay, so if you can imagine each one of these lists, so I've got 10 lists right in H. Each one of these lists, I'm going to use it to represent the robot's movement. All right, so in each one, I'm going to use the first number to represent the heading, the second number to represent the distance, and the third number to represent whether the pen is up or the pen is down. Okay, can you imagine that? So on our first line, say the heading would be 0 degrees, okay? The distance would be 200 millimeters, let's say, and the pen is up, or I'm sorry, the pen is down, okay? And that's going to be our first line on the H here, okay? All right, so how do I go ahead and store information inside this variables? Now, it'd be nice if we could just click in there and type, but we can't. If you are programming, in a regular programming language, maybe you can bring in a text file, right? You could have this stored somewhere, in a data file, right? Common data types are common or limited. CSV file. You can use an Excel spreadsheet, anything like that. But we are in VEXVR. Okay, so what we're going to need to do is we're actually going to need to load data into this variable first in our program. Okay. All right. And how we're going to do that is that we are going to go down to this make a 2D list and we're going to replace item 1 of 1. Okay. So let's say that we have item 1 of 1, item 1 of 2, item 1 of 3, 1, 3. Okay. And just for demonstration here, I'm going to set 1, 1 to 1, 1, 2 to 2, and 1, 3 to 3. Okay, and let's just see what happens when we do that. Okay, so I've got my program here, and I'm going to go ahead and click play. Okay, and notice that it runs, and then right after, see that this list is item 1. This 1 is in spot 1, 1. This spot is in 1. This 2 is in spot 1, 2. This 3 is in spot 1, 3. Okay. Now, usually in a programming language, these would start with 0. Like this would be the 0th element. But in this case, in VEXVR, it starts with 1. So this is 1, 1. This is 1, 2. This is 1, 3. So this would be 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 4, 1, 4, 2, 4, 3. 5, 1, 4, 5, 2, 5, 3, 6, 1, 6, 2, 6, 3. So you can see that each number in H, okay, can be referenced based upon its location by doing the number of the list first and then the position of the item second. So the position of the list, position of the item, right? Okay, that should make a lot of sense, right? All right. So now I don't want it to be 1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. I am going to go ahead and represent these as the numbers, okay? And I'm going to use a comment so that later on when I forget what I did, I can come back and remember. So I'm just going to put position 1 equals heading, 2 equals distance, 3 equals pen up or down. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put in a comment to remind myself which one of these equals. So I'm going to put list position 1 equals heading, 2 equals distance, and 3 equals pen up or pen down. Okay, so there we have it. So in each list, that, you know, the move, the way it's moving will be represented by these 3 numbers, okay? Position 1 is for the heading, 2 is for the distance, and 3 is for pen up and pen down. Okay, so pen up or pen down is a binary situation, right? It's a 1 or 0. It's on or off. It's true or false, right? So if the pen is down, if it's drawing, we're going to make it a 1. Okay. The distance that we're going to go is we're going to make this 200. Okay, and the heading that we're going to go is we're right now the heading is 0, right? So 0 is going, you know, up. Okay, so notice that we have our heading is 0 there. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and run this again and let's see what happens. So we reset it. We're going to run it. Okay, great, and we success, right? So we have our H variable here. The first position we're using as our heading is set to 0. Second position is set, that is our distance, is set to 200, and our third position is set to 1, meaning pen up or pen down. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's make this drive, right? So okay. So we're going to go ahead, and the first thing we're going to do is set the pen to be up or down, okay? And we're going to need an if statement for that, all right? Now, since it's a 0 or 1, okay, it's only ever going to be a 0 or 1. What we're going to say is, hey, if item 1,3 is equal to 1, then pen up. Or sorry, if item 1,3 is equal to 0, then pen up, else pen down. Okay, so we have our if statement. We're going to drag over an operator, our equal operator, and drop it right in there. And we're going to say if it's equal to 0, right? Okay, and then we're going to go get our item from H, right? So we're going to go down to the under make 2D list. We're going to drag over item 1 of 1. Okay. Now remember, we want item 1,3 of H is equal to 0. Then we're going to do our pen up. Okay, so we're going to scroll all the way up here. And we're going to say move robot pen up. Otherwise, else we're going to move robot pen down. Okay. All right, so there we're going to go ahead and set our pen first of all, okay? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set our heading. So we're going to turn to the correct heading, turn to heading, and then notice that anywhere we can put a number, because each position, you know, each item in H is a number, we can put this item 1 of 3 of H, okay? Or in this case, 1 of 2 of H, right? Or no, 1 of 1, right? We can put that anywhere where there's a number, okay, because it is a number type variable. All right, so then we can turn to heading, and remember our heading is stored in place 1, in position 1, so that's item 1 of 1 of 1 in H, degrees, and then we're going to go the distance. So we're going to drive forward 200 millimeters. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and try this. So we're going to go ahead and reload, and we're going to go ahead and run. There we go, 200. Okay, now, whoops, I didn't do the H. I just put in 200 millimeters. Let's go ahead and scroll down, and we're going to drag over, and we want to use our H value, right? So that's the second value. Okay, so, and this seemed really small. So for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go ahead and make it go, let's make it go, 800 distance, reload, and also for demonstration purposes, we're going to go ahead and make this, we'll going to go ahead and make it go a lot faster. Okay, so let's go ahead and scroll up. And we're actually even going to do this before the comments. I think really the first thing you should do if you're going to be programming this a lot is just make everything really fast so that you can don't have to wait for the robot to go. Unless you like waiting for the robot, which is fine too. All right, so, okay, so we're going to go ahead and play again. Okay, so we have a good thing we can see now, right? All right. So we have our first line in our H, all right, and now we're going to go ahead and kind of we're going to backtrack, right? So we're going to go ahead and take our block here, and we're going to duplicate this block, right? Okay, so I right-clicked, I dragged the block out, I right-clicked, duplicated. And remember, this is going to be our second item, right? So our second item, basically we want to go halfway back along the line, right? Okay, so we're going to go 400, not 4,800. And we want our heading, right? Our heading is going to be 180. Okay, and we don't need our pen up, right? Okay. Now, so we have our second grouping here, right? So if we take a look, we've set our heading, distance, and pen up or pen down, right? In row 1 of H. In row 2, we've set our heading, distance, pen up, and pen down. But now what we have is we have this situation where are we going to go ahead, like we have to set all the data, right? So this could be quite a few of these, you know, setting of the data. Do we have to do this again and again? Well, it turns out that we don't, okay? So each time that we loop through a row in H, we're going to do the same thing, right? We're going to set the heading to whatever the third position is in the row. We're going to, we're going to set the pen to whatever the third position is. We're going to set the heading to whatever the first position is, and we're going to drive forward the distance of whatever the second position is. So as soon as we see ourselves start to repeat code, it is the perfect place for, you guessed it, your favorite thing, it's a loop. All right, so let's go ahead and turn this into a loop here before we do any extra work, which programmers do not like. Okay, so we're going to need a couple things. First of all, we're going to need a variable to count our rows. Okay, so we're gonna make a variable. Okay, so we're gonna go down to make variable, and we're gonna call it row. Okay, and we're gonna click submit. Okay, all right, and we're gonna set this variable. We're gonna set this variable row to equal 1. Okay, so row we're gonna set to 1 first off. All right. Okay. Then we're going to say, okay, while, we're going to put in a while loop, and we're going to say while row is less than, okay, so we're going to say while, we're going to drag in row into the first one, while row is less than. And then what we can do is we can get the length of H in rows. So this is where the magic happens here. Okay, so basically we have this, we created a variable called row, and we set that variable equal to 1. Okay, so on the first iteration of this loop, the first time the loop goes through, row is going to be 1. All right, so we say row is less than the length of H in rows. Okay, and then what we're going to do is at the end of the loop, so we're going to go through, right? And we're going to do all the stuff we did before for row 1, okay? But this time, instead of row 1, notice how I'm dragging row over wherever I had the number of the row. So whatever the row number is, so in this case, the first time it goes through, row will just be 1, right? So the first time it goes through, row is 1. There we go. Okay. The second time it goes through, the second time it goes through right now, row will still be 1. so what we need to do is we need to go ahead and increment the row, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to set, let's see, I'm forgetting if they had a way to increment the row. No, they don't. Okay, so what we're going to say is we're going to go down and say, okay, so I had to pause the recording there because I had forgotten how to increment our variable. Okay, so sorry about that. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to set our variable. So we're going to drag over set variable, and we're going to set row. But instead of setting row to a number, we're going to say, hey, set row to row. Whoops, we're going to set row to row. Notice I dragged over the plus operator. Okay, we're going to say row, set row to, whoops. Row plus 1. Okay, so you can imagine if we go down on the first run, so the first run we're going to say row is equal to 1, right here where we have this set. So we set row equal to 1, okay? Then we have this while loop, okay? So in the first run of the while loop, row is 1. So we say, oh, row is 1. Is that less than the length of h in rows? Yes, it is, right? It's true. So it runs the code, right? So when it says if whatever is in position 3 of row, right now row is 1, right? Do the pen up and pen down, we set the heading, we set the drive forward to whatever's in row, the position for row 1, positions 1 and 2. And then at the end, the important thing is that then we go on to row 2, right? So this first run, it's row 2. All right, now, let's go ahead and test this code out and see what happens. So we're going to go ahead and reload and click run. Okay. Let's run that again and look at it really closely. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to actually take it down to 100 here so we can look at what's happening, because something interesting is happening. At the very end, something interesting is happening. Okay, so here we go. Okay, right now it's driving forward, right? We can see where it's driving. Whoops, let's run it one more time. Drives forward, turns around, comes back, now on row 2. Now see it resets to 0. So what's happening is the loop keeps going, right? So the loop runs over all of these rows in H, but the rest of them are just 0. So it has the effect of just resetting everything back to 0. Okay, so which is why it ends up with a heading of 0, if you were wondering. Okay, so we have our rows, and we could have it stop doing that. So for right now, we're just going to kind of remember, you know, what our last, it doesn't really matter what our last heading was because we're resetting the heading each time. Okay, so we're going to now go ahead and duplicate the block. All right, and we're going to go ahead and do row 3. Okay, so for row 3, remember we're making our H, so let's say it's half as wide as it is tall. Okay, so we're going to set the heading to 90, and we're going to go ahead and go 400, and the pen is going to be up. Okay, so now that we have our loop in place, it's really pretty easy. All right, so we're going to go ahead and reload. Okay, so we got row 1, row 2, row 3. Okay, here we go. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and we could do this a lot of different ways, right? So at this point, we're trying to make our H here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to pull off the 3. We're going to right click, duplicate block, add it onto the bottom, reset our row that we're talking about to 4. Okay, and this time the heading is going to be 180, and we're going to go 400, and we're going to go, the pen is going to be up. Okay, let's try it again, and notice how I'm just trying it after each row. This is what you should do. Okay, so basically, don't go too far. Don't write the whole thing and then test it. Okay, so just kind of incrementally test as you go, and there'll be no surprises. Okay, row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4. Okay, so we're at the bottom. We're ready to make our last part of the H here, and here we go. Okay, so now our heading is going to be 0, our length is going to be 800, and pen up or pen down is going to be 1. All right, let's go ahead and reload, and go ahead and click play. Row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5. Okay, and there we have our H. So you can see that by doing this process here of storing representing our data. Okay, so we're modeling the data, right? So we're modeling a real life situation using data. So we're creating our data first, and then we're processing that data using the robot, using a 2D list. If you got through this, way to go. Okay, and best of luck using a 2D list in your program.